says he is willing to speak with special counsel Robert Mueller under oath, saying, quote, "I'm looking forward to it." The president telling reporters that he expects to speak with Mueller in 2 to 3 weeks, but added that his legal team is working out the specifics. The president's comments come as an unidentified informant is revealing stunning corruption at the FBI and Justice Department. That informant part of the investigation by the Senate Homeland Security Committee. Its chairman is Senator Ron Johnson, and the senator has made it clear his committee is now investigating the FBI, its so-called secret society, all of whom have been working to subvert President Trump.
We have an informant that's talking about a group that were holding secret meetings off-site. There's so much smoke here. This is bias, potentially corruption at the highest levels of the FBI that is now investigating. And now and by the way, Robert Mueller used to run the FBI. He is in no position to do an investigation over this kind of misconduct.
All of this as Robert Mueller has gone on the defensive over the past few days. The special counsel office showing brazen animus toward President Trump and his administration. And as questions mount about the political corruption of Mueller's conflicted team of partisans, the leaks from the special counsel's office have become more frequent as evidence of the highly partisan leadership of both the Justice Department and FBI spill into the public arena. The House Intel Committee, the Senate Homeland Security Committee, among those revealing names of a number of Justice and FBI officials who were working in the interest of President Obama, Hillary Clinton, and against Donald Trump, both as candidate and as president. We take all of that up here tonight. We'll be talking with Chris Farrell of Judicial Watch and Greg Jarrett, Fox News legal analyst. Also tonight, President Trump issuing a straightforward warning to the man he calls Crying Chuck, the same senator who reneged on his pledge to assure border security in any border immigration deal. He now insists, does Senator Schumer, that there will be no wall for President Trump to bargain for. The president's response direct: no wall, no DACA. And the president making it absolutely clear on the issues of border security and immigration. He will be the one leading the nation. Our top story tonight: corruption at the FBI and Justice Department. Congress saying it will investigate the agencies following revelations of a secret society and after revelations of 5 months of missing text messages between anti-Trump officials. All of this as the number of leaks from Mueller's special counsel office rise as investigators' revelations of corruption at DOJ and the FBI rise as well. Fox News Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge with our report.
Lou, Fox News obtaining exclusive new details about the depth of White House cooperation with special counsel Robert Mueller. According to records reviewed by Fox, more than 20 White House personnel voluntarily gave interviews, including 8 people from the White House counsel's office. In all, more than 20,000 pages of records were provided to the special counsel that included issues related to former National Security Advisor Mike Flynn in Russia, as well as former FBI Director James Comey. Fox News was told copies of all documents provided to Capitol Hill were also provided to the special counsel. Personal attorney for the president called the level of cooperation unprecedented, as new reports suggest the special counsel probe is entering a critical phase. A series of leaks reporting that senior intelligence officials, from the Director of National Intelligence Dan Coats to CIA Director Mike Pompeo and NSA Director Admiral Mike Rogers, were interviewed by special counsel Robert Mueller, is intensifying pressure on the White House. Fox News can confirm that part of the special counsel's focus is the president's firing of FBI Director James Comey and former National Security Advisor Mike Flynn. A former Justice Department official under the Bush administration said all signs point to an investigation reaching its climax.
It's a good sign for the White House because if you think about it, this means that the probe by Mueller will wrap up, hopefully, in less than a year, which is almost like light speed for a federal investigation.
The president's lawyer has said publicly that a special counsel interview is inevitable, but sources tell Fox other witnesses, including Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who was questioned last week, the president's son-in-law and others, can answer Mueller's questions, adding there may be no single issue that only the president can explain. As the Russia probe momentum builds, so does congressional scrutiny of the Bureau under Director Comey.
They're the FBI. Nobody's ever going to investigate them. Well, sorry, we are going to start investigating them.
Republican Chairman Ron Johnson told Fox his government oversight committee is investigating a possible connection between the so-called secret society referenced in the FBI texts and whistleblower claims.
I have heard, from somebody who has talked to our committee that there is a group of individuals within the FBI that were holding secret off-site meetings. I think there's indications there were a number of high-level FBI officials.
Johnson and the Republican chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Chuck Grassley, want answers from the Justice Department's internal watchdog, Inspector General Michael E. Horowitz, about the missing text between demoted FBI agent Peter Strzok and reassigned FBI lawyer Lisa Page, and why their committees were told by Horowitz every text was recovered when 5 months are missing. On Fox, a Justice Department spokeswoman said they're working every angle
to find the text messages through other forms, whether it's the old phones, whether it's going to some of these technology companies that were involved and seeing if they have them.
In a text made public last year, Page and Strzok talk about avoiding detection. Page writes, "So look, you say we text on that phone when we talk about Hillary because it can't be traced." Federal law enforcement officials now tell Fox the missing Page-Strzok texts are part of a broader technical problem affecting 10% of the FBI cell phones. At least one Republican wants more answers from the FBI and former Attorney General.
What I do want is an opportunity to fairly question folks like Strzok and Page and Comey and Lynch and others with the benefit of all of the documents, or as many as can be located.
Late today, Fox News asked Special Counsel Robert Mueller's office to characterize the level of White House cooperation and whether their data is consistent with or conflicts with Fox's reporting, and there was no immediate response. Lou?
Catherine, thank you. Catherine Herridge. The Strzok-Page text, the FBI whistleblower revealing the systemic corruption, collusion, and obstruction within the FBI and the DOJ. And President Trump today saying he's looking forward to an interview with Special Counsel Robert Mueller. Our first guest tonight says the Attorney General should publicly announce the creation of a DOJ FBI corruption task force and the empanelment of a special grand jury. Joining me tonight, Chris Farrell, Director of Investigations and Research for Judicial Watch. And Chris, it's great to see you. I want to take up a couple of things first, if we may. First, the overall development. The president saying he's now willing to sit down with Mueller and have a conversation. Your thoughts about the wisdom and the president's courage here?
I'm sure the president's looking forward to it like he would a root canal, frankly. But look, it's a mistake for him to testify or provide testimony to Mueller. There's any number of ways to answer Mueller's question. Mueller is out for the president to destabilize or to remove him. This is a perjury trap in the making. There's nothing in particular that the president would have any...
Which is, by the way, which his lead attorney has acknowledged the possibility, if not the primary intent, of a perjury trap.
The president's attorney should have a discussion with Mr. Mueller and have him exhaust every other possible source of information and every other angle, investigative angle. I understand the president's position, and I respect it, that he's willing to go under oath and he's willing to talk to him, but really he should tell him just to drop dead.
And now we also learned, Catherine Herridge is reporting more than 20 White House personnel. I mean, and this to me is amazing, not including campaign team members, 20 White House personnel voluntarily giving interviews to the special counsel, 8 people from the White House counsel's office. I mean, this sounds egregious, it sounds overreaching, and it sounds really like a president who should be fighting the SOB, not accommodating him.
Well, I find it difficult to imagine 8 people from the White House counsel's office having interviews. I mean, just by the nature of the relationship, there's attorney-client privilege issues, there's presidential privilege issues. The president already has internal problems with Mr. Dillon providing the president with false and misleading information concerning his authority to fire FBI Director Comey. Dillon, in a New York Times article, is profiled as deliberately misleading the president, which is astounding to me. So the notion that 8 others or 8 additional people went over and provided testimony concerning the activities of the counsel's office, it's mind-boggling.
And the secret, is Senator Ron Johnson has provided a window into the FBI through the eyes and the voice of his unidentified informant. A secret society, off-site meetings, and clearly plotting subversion.
Yeah, I mean, if you transfer this, and let's say this all happened at the Defense Department, what word would you use? This would be a coup d'etat, right? So you have law enforcement officers, sworn law enforcement officers, engaging in this kind of activity. This is a direct threat to the Constitution. It is.
Well, we don't know that this doesn't go beyond the DOJ departments and agencies into the National Security Division. It could go a number of places. It could reach, it's all speculation, but where it could reach does put this on the level of treason, and it seems to me very clearly a department that now is working against the interest of the United States of America.
And meanwhile, I have talked to 3 FBI agents who've told me this whole lost text message thing with Samsung is absolute baloney. That there's no way in the world this could have happened. That the FBI actively monitors agents' communications, both from a insider threat and counterintelligence perspective, and that their backups have backups. So 3 different sources have told me there's no way in hell that it's possible that someone is deliberately sabotaging this or deliberately deleting or lying. So,
or somebody has culled through all of those text messages, has found evidence that would embarrass both the Department of Justice, the FBI, and would reveal perhaps everything from the making of violent threats against the president to extraordinary venom against the president and his administration.
And Lou, you know that we've already caught, Judicial Watch has caught the IRS and State Department lying about missing and deleted emails and texts. So this is nothing new. This is, the 4th or 5th, maybe the 6th time the government's been caught in a lie like this. And the danger that you've pointed out is that this is a threat to the Constitution. It's a threat to the presidency. This is not just partisan politics. This undermines the public's faith and confidence in the government and government officials upholding their oath to the Constitution. There is no graver threat in my memory.
Well, let's talk about what the appropriate solution is here. I know that, as you're suggesting, Judicial Watch has sued for the Strzok page text messages.
Correct.
How soon do you think they could be produced? And will they be produced by the government, or will be produced by carriers, for example? What would be the source?
The way we've sued is under the Freedom of Information Act.
Right.
So the burden is upon the government to produce these records. They've already produced some to Congress, as we know from reporting.
Right.
But what we want to be sure is that they're all produced. And the only way to do that is to get in front of a federal judge. And then once the production begins, to us, do a compare and contrast to make sure that the full record is out there.
Chris Farrell, everyone watching and listening. Here next, and all hell about to break open as Congress launches an investigation of the FBI's anti-Trump secret societies. We'll have the latest for you on the investigation of the investigators straight ahead.
Ciao, Bella.
A lot happening tonight. Breaking news on the classified intelligence memo detailing FISA surveillance abuses within the FBI and Justice Department. The House Intel Committee. Fox News has just acquired a memorandum delivered from the Department of Justice to the House Intel Committee. It attacks the very thought that the committee would release that memo to the American public. The letter reads in part, "We believe it would be extraordinarily reckless for the committee to disclose such information publicly without giving the department and the FBI the opportunity to review the memorandum." My. The Justice Department doesn't want us to to read that memo. Let's move on, if we could, please. The Harvard Law professor Alan Dershowitz, a Democrat, also warning that Robert Mueller's witch hunt would plunge the country into political turmoil. Joining us now to start assessing all of this, Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett. Greg, thanks for being here. Let's start with first the Justice Department trying to deny the public's right to know.
Well, they've lost all credibility, having lost integrity, and they don't want the public to see their own wrongdoing, which is why they're trying to cover it up. Fortunately, it's not up to the DOJ. As long as the Intel Committee votes in committee to release it, the president then has 5 days to say no. This president will surely say yes. It will become, I guarantee you, this memo will become public, notwithstanding what DOJ wants.
Well, turning to what the DOJ is doing here, the fact they even wrote that memorandum is absolutely stupid. And apparently they would have to have the Attorney General's permission to do it. Would they not?
Yeah, well, Jeff Sessions long ago lost all control of the Department of Justice. It's now being run by the likes of Rod Rosenstein, who has serious political bias. We already know that. What's interesting is that this memo will likely show crimes committed by the FBI and the DOJ by going to a FISA judge seeking a warrant based on a false document, the dossier. That's a crime. It's called abuse of power, 18 U.S.C. 242. 10 years punishment behind bars.
So when do the arrests start?
It should have happened yesterday or last week or whenever it happened, it should have been found out. But it was hidden for a long time.
Hidden, and I hope that's also a federal crime.
Sure.
And Michael, Horowitz, is it Horowitz?
Horowitz, the IG.
We've been sort of imprinted with this idea that IGs are beyond conflict, political, partisan. But at the same time, we're not hearing much from him. And his desk is overflowing with charges and potential charges. Where are we going for the solution here?
Well, I think you will see some pretty solid results from Horowitz, the Inspector General of the Department of Justice. His report is expected out sometime in, January, February.
That's my problem.
The other thing to look for is the Intelligence Committee report, which will also be coming out following
hopefully next week,
release of this 4-page memo.
Yeah, which we think could come as early, with the president's approval, as early as next week.
When Congress comes back, I think on Monday, then they'll begin considering and voting.
So here we are with a constitutional crisis possible, Alan Dershowitz says, if the general counsel goes after the president on obstruction of justice. Right. We have the president tonight announcing he's willing to sit down and talk with a man under oath.
Well,
he's not following your advice.
He is not, but he has no choice, quite frankly. Executive privilege only applies to protections from Congress, not from a legitimate potential prosecution armed with a grand jury. The best the president can do is to have his lawyers try to limit the scope of it. But in the end, the president could be forced to testify in front of a grand jury. So he wants to avoid that.
So let me review the bidding. We now have a Justice Department that appears to be corrupt with numerous officials at the very top of the Justice Department.
Right.
We have an FBI in which the same thing appears to be the case. Mm-hmm. There is no action underway, criminal action, against those who have, it is reasonably believed, defrauded a FISA court and have surveilled U.S. citizens unlawfully. And he has to put up with a general counsel, he the president, that is as conflicted as any person involved in this corrupt mess over at Justice and the FBI.
He'll end up talking to Mueller, and he will say, I don't know any Russians. I never collaborated or colluded with them. As for obstruction of justice, I never tried to interfere in an investigation. I followed the advice of Rod Rosenstein, who wrote a memo telling me to fire Comey. And under the Constitution, I can fire anybody in the federal branch for a reason or no reason at all, period.
And if it's obstruction of justice, Dershowitz says it's a constitutional crisis. Do you agree?
The professor is absolutely right. This is not obstruction of justice.
All right. Great to have you with us. Thank you. Be sure to vote on our poll. The question tonight: do you believe the top officials at the FBI and Department of Justice have lost the trust of the American people? We want to hear from you. Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Like me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram at Lou Dobbs Tonight. On Wall Street, stocks closed mixed, but the Dow gained 41 points and closed at a new record high. The S&P lost 2, the Nasdaq down 45. Volume picking up to 4 billion shares. A reminder to listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast on the Salem Radio Network. Up next, the Senate offering a strange definition of bipartisan as a group of Dems, rhinos, and never-Trumpers come together to look for a deal on, that's right, immigration and open borders. We take it up with Ed Rollins and much more. And later, 5 months of text messages between anti-Trump FBI agents and lovers missing as the agency blames Samsung. Turns out, well, we'll tell you what turns out. Stay with us. We're coming right back.
Oh, the things we do to get ahead.
Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski, those are 2 names you don't hear me mention much. The hosts of the left-wing MSNBC's Left Wing Morning Joe. They've been attacking, ridiculing President Trump from the very beginning of his campaign for the presidency. And this morning, they got a little irksome, taking aim at this broadcast and at me for daring to report on the growing scandal of the FBI corruption, the Department of Justice corruption, and the very idea that that should offend the rule of law and democracy in this country.
There is a declared, Lou Dobbs said it, a declared war from the right on the FBI and the Justice Department. What do the directors of News Corp think when they have Lou Dobbs on the air declaring that now is a time to go to war with the FBI and the Justice Department?
Declaring. Do you like that? Declaring. Joe, work on it. Good grief. I've got to tell you. First, everything that I say on this broadcast is backed up by fact. And what is opinion? It's my opinion based on those facts. And joining me now to sort through all of this, former Reagan White House political director, a senior presidential fellow at Hofstra University, Fox Business contributor, Joe Scarborough. My. He doesn't like the fact that I would, or any other American citizen for that matter, would be offended by an FBI that's losing thousands of text messages just as Congress, in its oversight role, is demanding them, that its agents are anti-Trump, at least a number of them. Its officials obviously carrying great animus toward the president and his administration.
Well, Joe used to be a Republican congressman, maybe even used to be a Republican. He now basically is marrying his co-host there once their divorces are final. And I think at the end of the day, she comes out of a long line of Democrat family. Her father was Jimmy Carter's national security advisor. They thought they were going to be Trump's great friends because they said nice things about him in the course of the campaign. Now they do nothing but criticize them, and they basically think that they're the Blue Squad.
What about the very idea,
the idea
that they seem to think as elitists of the left that a citizen, by the way, I also am responsible for that in my day-to-day work, to look at the facts and report my opinion, my analysis as my view.
Well,
to suggest that you cannot criticize the FBI and DOJ when they're out of control is nuts.
Equally as important, what you're reporting is what United States senators are basically looking deeply into. And
Senate Homeland. I mean, we got 5 congressional committees and a 4-page memo that we're told will demonstrate that this is larger than Watergate. We're supposed to whisper it, apparently, according to MSNBC.
Morning Joe's an entertainment show and basically competes with all the other entertainment shows that are on.
Well, that isn't working.
No, it's not working.
It's not for me, anyway.
I think you're a news show, and I think you're reporting on what's going on.
Well, we're an opinion show.
And I think every American should basically be very concerned on what's going on in the FBI. You've not cast any aspersions on any the people there. They cast aspersions on these facts that basically are coming forth every single day.
Well, I even said last night, I'm tired of making an exception for the rank and file. We think we know that there is one rank and file special agent attorney of the FBI who stepped forward to as a whistleblower. Think of that. You're talking tens of thousands of employees in that rancid, corrupt led organization right now. And one person steps up to say to America, you can't put up with this anymore. This is what's really going on. That's just wrong.
And I think the reality is that when you're as old as I am, and you've watched the game as long as I have, there was a 40-year history when J. Edgar Hoover ran it, and it was a terrible agency. Mark Felt, who was the deputy director of the FBI, was deep throat. So it's not like it's some new innocent thing that my sense is we had hoped that it got cleaned up, and obviously it didn't totally.
So let's look at where we're headed politically here. The president sitting down with Mueller against the wishes of many who feel it's, first of all, it honors a man who right now looks to be connected and conflicted and in association with a corrupt DOJ leadership and a corrupt FBI leadership.
Well, I'd like to know where Mueller's going. I mean, I think obviously this was supposed to be a Russian investigation, and I.
Well, we know there's no evidence of a Russian collusion.
No evidence of that, and I totally agree with Professor Dershowitz that there's going to be a very serious conflict here, and there's a separation of powers, and I think to a certain extent Mueller is going way over his skis and is not going to find anything. And I think the president has to be very, very careful.
Well, he seems to be on a determined course to aid in the subversion of this administration, this president, because his attack is on the president himself.
Well, the absurdity of asking McCabe how he voted. I was the political director of the White House. I asked every single political appointment what their registration was. McCabe was the deputy. Deputy is a civil service job. He was becoming the acting director.
He was being interviewed
for the directors, which is a presidential appointee.
Right.
And the president had every right.
Making it entirely legitimate
Absolutely.
To ask him what his
politics. Who he was and what his
By the way,
were.
You would think the president would, though, in all fairness, have some people who work for him asking those kinds of questions.
He did not. That was my job when I was there, and basically everybody knew.
That phone ought to be ringing right now for Ed Rollins. You think we're going to get to the bottom of this soon?
I hope so, because
we all hope so. I'm asking the.
I think we are.
I'm asking the dean.
I think we are. I think, but it's not because of people like Morning Joe. It's people like you and others that are basically digging deep.
Morning Joe, he wouldn't want to ruffle any feathers.
No. Not. He doesn't want to offend any of his liberal friends in New York.
Ed Rollins, thank you. We're coming right back with much, much more. Stay with us. And Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett. And I want to ask both of you this question, and that is the Judiciary Committee and their role here, and how important is it, should they want to and succeed in talking to James Comey again?
They need to put Comey under oath because it appears as though he may have made two false statements. First of all, he said the day he exonerated Hillary Clinton that nobody at the Department of Justice, including Loretta Lynch, knew anything about his decision. Now we know the text messages from Strzok and Page show that Lynch did in fact know. So was Comey lying? The second is he testified before the House committee a year ago that he made the decision to exonerate Clinton only after she was interviewed. Now we know from documents that he changed the wording to exonerate her 3 weeks before she was cleared. That appears to have been a false statement by Comey. If so, he lied to Congress. That's a crime.
And Chris, your thoughts?
Greg nailed it. He's exactly correct. But I think that Mr. Comey will decline to even appear.
Is that his? It's impossible to force him to testify.
Well, you can slap him with a subpoena.
And with a subpoena, he has to show up. But does he at that point still have to? He's still got constitutional rights, right?
He does. He can take the fifth and refuse to testify.
Or, he'll put himself in a position that Attorney General Holder was put in, where he'll be held in contempt of Congress, and you saw how far that went.
Yeah, absolutely. This is getting to be a huge number of people from the White House who've testified, who have been interviewed by the investigating special counsel's office. The president himself, as we have talked about, is saying he's willing to discuss it all with the special counsel. I'm trying to understand his his thinking, the president's thinking, dealing with a special counsel who's highly questionable in terms of his own integrity and his refusal to recuse himself from a deeply conflicted role. Chris?
Well, with respect to the 20 people being interviewed at the White House, 20 times 0 is still 0, right? If they didn't do anything and there was no, vast, deep conspiracy with the Russians, which of course there wasn't, you can only ask the same question so many times to get the same answer. I'm not as concerned about that, frankly. What I am concerned about is what we chatted about briefly before, and that is the president putting himself in a position where Mr. Mueller and others will do everything they can to take him down. I mean, they want his removal. We shouldn't kid ourselves. Or they're going after the scalp of someone in his family, like his son-in-law, Jared Kushner.
Yeah, I agree with Chris. I was a defense attorney. I have yet to meet a prosecutor who cares a whit about justice and fairness. They care, in my experience, about indictments and convictions. They're one-loss record, and that's it.
Correct. And this business about opposing the release by the House Intel Committee of the 4-page memorandum that is apparently earth-shaking in its content and specificity about corruption and subversion within DOJ and the FBI. Out comes this memorandum from the Justice Department saying we oppose the release of that to the American public. Chris, this is the Attorney General speaking. He had to approve that.
I hope the President of the United States during the State of the Union reads it during his address. I want President Trump to read the memo.
Okay, I've been trying to figure that one out for just a second there.
No, I want him to get up with the 4-page memo. I want him to read it as part of his State of the Union address. If you want to understand the State of the Union, look at the Department of Justice and the FBI. Read that memo. He'll be briefing the American public. He will educate them on what the real State of the Union is.
That's a great point, Chris.
Nixon famously said, it's never the crime, it's the cover-up. Well, in this case, with the Department of Justice and the FBI, it's both crimes and cover-ups.
Greg Jarrett, thank you. Chris Farrell, thank you, sir. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Lou.
Up next, the president set to leave for Davos in just moments, looking to advance his America First agenda to the gathered group of globalists. I have a few thoughts about it all. A lion's den, that doesn't work with the Alps, does it? But I'll be working on a few metaphors, and we'll have them for you right after this. Stay with us.